Hello, hello. I'm Nina Curtis from At Maytree, and we're here for another Soul Wisdom Exchange. Today, I have Juliet Cardinal here with me, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Juliet, and then we'll say hello and welcome. As a reminder, these conversations are about our soul wisdom and our soul wisdom languages. So I define soul wisdom as our authentic ways of knowing and being. Also, you could explain that as the ways you receive information and the ways you express yourself. So Juliet is a super cool person. We're going to have a great conversation. I know. Let me tell you a little bit about her. So she has worked as a private investigator. She has been a professional flamenco dancer and singer, a solo international traveler, and hasn't always felt like that was the best life for a highly empathic and sensitive person. She's struggled with overwhelm and anxiety and knew that finding a healthier way to follow her passions while caring for her highly sensitive and empathic heart and soul is what she needed to do. So already having a degree in psychology and a lifetime interest in all things mystical and spiritual, she added in training and personal coaching, mindfulness, meditation, biofeedback, and stress management, became a Reiki master to learn more about her own energy work and intuitive guidance, and has also added in massage therapy and started her own practice to learn more about healing, somatic awareness, and body-mind connections. She is now an empath coach, combining her education and experience into a holistic, co-active, and mindful approach, helping other empaths learn to embrace and protect their sensitive, open-hearted selves while claiming their dreams and adventures and bringing their gifts to the world. What a beautiful space that you hold, Juliet. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
Excellent. I'm so excited to have you here. So anything you want to add or just share about what I just talked about before we jump in?
That was awesome. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. It was really fun for me to listen to.
Yeah, you've accomplished a lot and done some really cool things. So one of the fun things I feel like we would be amiss if we did not share kind of our meeting. So Juliet and I are both in online group, a social media group. I think is it the Wellpreneur group that we're both in?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I'm
in a lot of groups.
I'm in a lot of groups too. I think we all kind of are these days. But there was some kind of, like share your business, share what you do kind of post. And there was something that I just immediately was magnetized. Like, I need to talk to this woman. Like, I need to know her more. And I reached out and was like, hey, we need to chat. Here's some info. If you're interested, let's connect. And she was like, yes. And then I had this moment where I was like, I know nothing about this person. Like, I think I saw one word in there that was like empath or empath coach. And, but that's not always enough to just like drive me to talk to someone. There's usually more of like, I'll look up their website, I'll, have a conversation, have a little chat, something. But I just knew like there was this deep knowing. And and I have not been disappointed at all. So tell us a little bit about your soul wisdom languages. I'd love to hear what does that mean for you?
Well, it's perfect because what you just said is exactly what I'm thinking about, is the fact that you got a spark, you got a feeling, and you believed it, you followed up on it, you trusted it, and you just said that that's always a good idea. That always works for you. That's the way you follow your path, as opposed to logic and getting it all planned out. And so really that's, I think, what comes up for me when I hear about the soul wisdom language is the intuition, 100%. And it's that, well, in my work as an empath coach, and then also some of the other projects I'm working on that I want to get out there, it's easy to say, follow your intuition, but you need to have a practice of getting still enough so that you can hear past the busy mind and all the distractions of the world around us. Yeah. And then you need to actually have awareness. And as a sensitive person, I think probably you and probably most of the people who watch this will understand.
Who are watching.
Yeah, that you have to have a lot of awareness of yourself. What energy and emotion is yours versus the person that's in the room that's upset, that's causing you to be upset. Getting to that still place, getting to that place of awareness so that you know where you are in your body and you're aware of the messages your body's giving and you're hearing your intuition, and then asking for that guidance. And in order to add, that's the, that you have to, asking is sort of having faith that you will get, that you will receive, and then acting on it. And so it's telling somebody to follow their intuition, just follow your heart is an easy thing to say, but I think that people don't break it down a lot. And for people who are already doing it, they assume that people can just do it, and everybody can do it, everybody, even if they're not highly sensitive, but they need to do the work.
Well, because like you said, I think this is a really important point, and I'm so glad that you brought this up, because one of the first things that I had to even identify when, now I say I'm a soul wisdom mentor. What does that even mean, right? Like, it's me helping you understand how to be in that conversation with your intuition. And if you don't know the language that your intuition is speaking, how are you supposed to communicate with it, right? Like, I know you and I both have done a lot of international travel, and much of that actually solo. I don't know if we ever talked about that, but I've done a lot of solo international travel as well. And when you go somewhere that you don't speak the language, you have to find other ways of communicating, right?
That's a great analogy. That's perfect.
Yeah. So once you find what that point is where you can have that interpretation of the language, even though you're speaking different languages, you have a common language. You have, whether it's body language, whether it's a smile, whether it is, picking things up and showing or doing, right? That's exactly what happens with our intuition, that is speaking to us in a particular way. And if the message doesn't come through in that way, it comes through in another way, right? Until it keeps trying different avenues until it's like, okay, now you get the message. But sometimes we ignore those subtle messages, and then we end up flat on our face because we've gotten this like big push, big message, and it's like, oh, okay, now I get it, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things I run into the most, I think, with empath clients, is the overwhelm or the getting sick because of those messages. And if you're highly sensitive, you're getting it even more. And if you don't know what it is, then that's not great. If you do know what it is, then it's wonderful. It's such a gift. But if you don't, then you're just being bombarded by that chaos, and you don't even know that you don't know the language. So imagine if you were traveling internationally thinking that you could just get what you needed, not prepared, hearing all these sounds that don't mean anything, and not even getting that's what. But the analogy of the language is wonderful because you can learn a language. And so it seems like absolutely impossible when you first start, and it's all just chaos, and it's all like there's no meaning whatsoever. And then once you start trying, and then you practice and you do it, and it's just a systematic approach, and it actually works. And you say a couple words and they were just sounds to you a week before, and you say these words and people respond, and you're like, oh my God, that actually works.
How cool is that, right? Like, whenever I go to another country, when I don't know the language specifically, there are always words that I try to find out right away. How do I say hello and goodbye? How do I say thank you? How do I ask for help? Like, there are certain things that are very key to knowing. But just like you said, at one point, those words were just sounds, right? And if you think about it as a written language, they were just shapes, they were just lines. And that is what art is too, right? Like, art is, for me, art is one of my soul wisdom languages, and it comes through in the form of shapes and lines and colors. Just like when you're writing something, you write in shapes and lines with colors, right? And you speak that too. The colors really are the intonation, right? Of, am I going to go up? Am I going to go down? Is it a question? Do I go up at the end of the sentence? Or am I expressing emotion by getting really loud? Or, getting really quiet or anything like that. There are a lot of similarities between different languages that may be really subtle until you become aware of them, and then you can see them really clearly.
Yeah, so two things are coming up for me at the same time, and sorry about that. But first of all, I
No,
totally
no.
want, I totally want to steal your analogy about the language. I mean, I
Yeah.
hadn't made because it's funny because that's what this is called. So I hadn't made the connection until now. But for what I try to do and the course I'm trying to create and the blogs I'm writing, the analogy of learning your own intuitive language
Mhm.
being similar to learning another language, a foreign language. And it's such a great analogy. So I just want to say up front, I'm going to probably take it from
Please.
you.
That's okay.
I'll give
Yeah,
you
I
credit if I
mean,
didn't write it.
I
And then
spoke it, but it's just truth, right? Like it's
no,
just
it's wonderful. It's just and then the other thing was you brought up art, and it's the same thing with music. And I wrote lots and lots of songs and performed a lot, and the message comes through in a different way. And it's
Mhm.
so that's why that's why the arts in general are
Mhm.
so important, besides the fact that the people who get to enjoy them later hopefully enjoy them. For the process, it's like you're getting another way for your intuitive self to express a whole new language, because we all know that our own verbal language cannot express everything. And
Right.
and so art and music can come through in other forms and other flavors, and I just think that that's really beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. And music is very, like, I close my eyes when I think about it, because it's such there's a vibration, and that's actually, I'm trained as a sound healer as well, and there is a vibration in a frequency in music. And so even popular music that we hear, we may think of like, oh, this is just it's just words put to sound, right? And added
Yeah.
in rhythm, but it's so much more than that. Even you strum the guitar and there is a vibration that is a physical sensation. Your
Yeah.
vocal cords do the same thing. They reverberate and they create this vibration that comes through. Our voice is a very, very powerful instrument. And I don't mean that just in the sense that, like, yes, it is a very powerful tool that we have. We can speak our truth. We can, use words in a way through our voice, but the sounds that can come through our body, through our vocal cords, are also amazingly healing and
Yeah.
powerful.
On both sides, for the person doing it and for the person hearing it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Um, so I know you've done so many things and bring all this kind of variety into the work that you do. And I think that's a really beautiful approach, because honestly, we all do, right? We all have different experiences. And I was just having a conversation with a friend and colleague just before we got on this call, and we were talking about how I was giving her an example of how, in a particular situation, there was a person that I was working with in a one-on-one intuitive session. And I had this realization that there were these moments in my life, choices that I made, activities that I engaged in, things that I had done that made me distinctly qualified to be working with this person in this very moment.
Wow.
And when I say that, the things that came together were the fact that, I have a really, really good friend of mine who is, anyway, she speaks Arabic. And then I also have traveled a couple times in Russia, and I really like baking. And I have an empathy for particular, behaviors, because I've seen them, and with people that I'm very close to, like, for instance, maybe like alcoholism or violence in certain ways. Like, I've seen it from a different perspective and been on the side of, I love this person and I care about this person, and their actions were very, unhealthy, but I also can kind of see that there's more to it than just the action, right? There's more with
Yeah.
that person. And so that particular moment, I had series of things that I could identify in that moment to say, wow, this is really interesting that I went to Russia when I was in high school, and I now have this really good friend who speaks Arabic, and I taught in a school where Arabic was the language teaching. And there were all these things coming in together that were like, you would never see this on a resume, right? No one would put that on their resume. And then the very next person, or like the person I was talking to, for instance, I was like, there's this whole other set of qualifications that I bring to the table in this conversation because I was trained as an art teacher and I am an artist, and I have a friend whose parents live in New Orleans, and I have this kind of like history with New Orleans, and I have this kind of hippie spirit because I grew up in Vermont, and my parents were of the era that that's what they brought into my existence, and I have a love of color and rain. We were talking about wearing rain jackets and just getting really kind of kid-like, childlike, and that being a part of your magic. And so I was like, and then again, if you look at that and say, would I list that on a resume?
Yeah.
No, but those experiences, so different and diverse, all made me very distinctly qualified to be talking with both of these people. And so it's really interesting that, when we look at something from the perspective of, or through the lens of the way we've kind of been trained to look at qualifications, what qualifies you to do the work that you do, and then you look at it from a very different perspective of what makes you uniquely appropriate in this very specific situation, it's vastly different, right?
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think what you just said there at the end sums up why we have such a problem. I shouldn't say sums up. Generally, why most people who struggle with imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Because we are not taught to look at our life in a holistic way. And so, I mean, and I think everybody knows what imposter syndrome is, but if anybody doesn't, it's that, who am I to do this? So you want to apply for that promotion, ask for a raise, start your own business. It's endless how many things. And then immediately it jumps up. Well, I'm not qualified. Who am I to do that? What are people going to think if I go online and start talking about soul languages, right?
Yes.
And it's just like, because we are not taught to value these very, very disparate, rich experiences we've had. And I think that in my work, and I know that in your work, I mean, a big part of it is getting people to see how freaking amazing they are. I mean, like, and I mean, and I'm not just saying that, I'm not being coachy.
Right.
Like,
I know.
When you speak to an individual and you really hear their story, I mean, that was one of the things, the private investigation work that you brought up on my bio. I'm still in it a little bit. I love it. It's just something that I've learned what I need to learn from it. And I want to bring some other stuff in, but it's been 15 years working for the defense in capital murder cases. And so I'm hung out with a lot of people who've done a lot of really bad things, and then there's a whole different drama when they've been wrongly accused. That's a whole nother thing. But with people who've done some bad things and they've admitted to it and it's a thing, and we're doing this defense work, I didn't know how I would respond to that. And you brought up before, judging somebody from this one thing, the one thing that they did. And it's a real minimizing thing to do. And so when you're sat and you got to know somebody as a person who's considered the worst of the worst, because they're facing the death penalty. So they're considered by our society as the worst of the worst. And I don't want them out running around doing bad things. I'm okay with, but this is when you sit there across from somebody and hear their story, no matter who they are, they're incredibly interesting and they bring such a wealth of experience. And from the person who's supposed to be the worst of the worst, there's still that spark of divinity within them. Or that's the word I use. There's, a billion different words for it. And I didn't know until I got into this work that was something that was the way that I saw people. And so, maybe it's easy, when it's somebody that is on paper, on their resume, an expert at this, an expert at that, very accomplished. They're great. They don't do bad things. They only do good things. They're brilliant, all that. But that's not what it is to be an amazing person, because anyone sitting across from you at the table, I was going to say, but through the computer, if you
Wherever.
really, really hear their story and you really see them for that spark of divinity that's within them, they're amazing. And I get so frustrated sometimes when people can't see it. And I think I had a client even that we used to call, he used to say, oh, it's the P word. And that was potential. Because I was always hassling about that. Because I'm like, oh my God, you could. And it's like,
Yes.
I just wish that people could see how amazing they were from the outside. You know, the people that know what they've done and know what what they've accomplished and what they're capable of. And it might not be stuff that goes on a freaking resume. And that doesn't matter.
Yeah. You know, I have this friend who she'll say sometimes that people will tell her, especially partners will tell her that she expects too much from them. And I had this really deep, vulnerable conversation with her one time. And what was uncovered was that it's not that she expects too much of them. It's that that's how they're receiving it. And that's, you know, I honor that. If that's how you receive it, that's how you receive it. But what we identified for her is that she can see the potential in people. One of her gifts is that she sees, when she comes into contact with someone, she sees their very highest, very most loving, compassionate, you know, shining bright star that they are, and wants so badly to help them get to that point, because that's, you know, she sees it and it's beautiful. And
that's really hard.
It is very hard, you know, because I have a similar type of thing where I can see multiple outcomes and I can see patterns when someone's heading in one direction or in another direction, including sometimes myself. Not always, because I think sometimes it's harder to see it yourself. But when I tune in, when I'm really present and aware, like with the practices, like you said, I can tune into that and see like, okay, there's some patterns and this is the direction that heads this way. And this is the direction that heads this way. And it makes me want to like jump out in the street and be like, don't go that way. Right.
Yeah.
But you can't make that decision for someone.
No, and that's like advanced level stuff, and that's really hard, but that's realizing what you control, what they control, and realizing that everybody isn't on your same journey. And you know, I guess I'm coming up with a bunch of steps at one time. I do that, so I apologize.
No, it's okay.
The first thing that comes up is, you know, Carl Rogers' absolute positive regard, that I will love you. And when I say I will love you no matter what, it doesn't mean I have to be living with you or be friends with you or be, you know, in a relationship. Some people you can love from afar if they're really, really on a path that's hurtful to you or too hard to be with. But the fact is that they are who they are and they're on their own path. And also sometimes I'm wrong, often, right? It's like, oh, just because I think that that's what that person should be doing isn't always what they should be doing. And even if it's clearly they're on a path that's like really not good, and that's objectively clear, they might not be ready to move on. They might still have things to learn. I've done all sorts of stupid things for a long time, longer than I should have. And those turned out to be my best lessons in life. And I wouldn't undo them for anything. And so, but I'm so like, I love people so much and I'm overly empathic in that way that it almost you can almost become controlling.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, no, you should, and so there's this balance between being encouraging and letting people do their thing. And that's really hard. I'm not wanting to jump in there all the time. And the good intentions are great. But if they are, I don't know, they can almost become controlling, and that's a bad word to use, but it kind of happens.
It can be though. And it can also kind of, I think it can also give a shove in the direction that you're not wanting to shove them in, because it's like, don't tell me what to do. Right.
Totally.
And then, so we have a comment. Let's see. She says, we can give them the messages that are meant from them, but they have to make a choice what to do with it. Exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I think that instead of kind of coming in and saying, oh, do this or do that, don't do this, don't do that. And I have people who clients that I work with who will straight up ask me, Regina, tell me what to do. I want to know. And I'm like, no, I cannot do that, because, I can help shed some light on, here's what I see here, here's what I see here, but you have to really make that choice. I cannot make that choice for you. And because even if I tell you what to do, you are still making the choice to do it. And that then puts you in this the word I want to use is toxic, but it's I think that word is overused so much, but it puts you in this very unhealthy relationship of blame and power. And those two things can be very, very dangerous, where, it's when you give your power over to someone else to make a decision for you, you're abandoning yourself, right? And then you're putting them in that position, but it also sets them up to be the object of blame when something doesn't go the way you want it to. But if you know much about the energetics and how energetics work, when you do that, it's not just that you're abandoning yourself, but you are actually sinking further into the energy of what you don't want by placing so much power, giving away the power to make that choice yourself, right? So then you're actually exemplifying or amplifying the energy in the thing that you don't want. So it's actually more likely that it's probably going to go awry.
Yeah. That accountability aspect is really important. It's like, it's hard to make the decision, and it's hard to take responsibility. So so I have a little tool that I've learned. I realized quite some time ago that I could tell what I truly wanted to do based on who I called for advice. Most of the time, subconsciously, and my conscious mind was not letting me know that I already knew the answer. And this is, of course, like a huge portion of my work and your work. It's like, well, we already have the answers. We're carrying them around in our heart or our spirit or wherever you want to define it.
Absolutely.
But we're not trusting our own authority. So it's easy. It feels safer somehow and less wincy to say, oh, you decide, I don't really know. And then I get to blame you if it goes wrong. But so what I started, so if I was, something silly, like I thought I didn't know whether I should break up with some guy or something. And I have different friends who I know them for years. And most of the time I probably pretty much know. The one friend is going to say, oh, forgive him for anything. He loves you so much. He's so sweet. The other one was like, no, you need to like move on. This guy's a jerk. Right. And I wasn't even noticing for quite a few years that I was calling the person that was going to tell me what I wanted to hear, for better or for worse. So maybe I was making a dumb decision, but I needed to be on that path longer. So I would call the one generally who said, forgive him. And but I realized that I realize that all the time. So if I'm trying to decide so I've been one-on-one coaching for a long time, but I'm just now kind of going public and doing social media things and starting a blog. And so I've had a lot of questions coming up with like, how woo-woo do I want to be out there? Like, because I'm as woo-woo as you can possibly get, but I want to be able to speak to a broad audience and all that. You understand that?
I totally understand. And I've embraced my woo and my weirdness. And it's just part of the process, right?
Yeah. And so I was wanting guidance. I was needing to work through that. And I realized that it's like, who am I going to ask about that? And I had just made this appointment with this like super, super, super out there psychic channeler and not a business coach. And I'm like, okay, so probably I want to go. My heart is telling me, without letting my brain know, my heart is telling me that I do want to go a little bit that way based on who I'm calling for advice. And so now, if I'm in a turmoil and I can't get a hold of anyone, actually this happened about 15 years ago. I realized this. If I can't get a hold of anyone in that particular moment that I'm freaked out, I'm like, wait, who am I calling? What are they probably going to tell me? So that's what I want to hear. I already know what I want to do in this situation. I don't need. So I realized I was wanting someone to say, yes, what you want to do is the right thing. I was just wanting
validation, right? You want the external validation. Yeah. And that is the one thing that it's, you will find exactly what it is that you're looking for, right? Yep. I could go on the internet and I could look up, can dolphins walk on two legs? And I could find something on the internet that would tell me, yes, dolphins can walk on two legs. They're hiding their legs in their pockets and they're swimming around in the ocean with these hidden legs. And when we're asleep at night, they get out and walk around on land. I'm sure I could find that somewhere.
Conspiracy of dolphins.
Of course, right? Like, I mean, I just made that up, but now it probably exists somewhere. Yeah. So, but I could also find something if I was convinced, like, no, this is absolutely not true. I would go in and find exactly the opposite. No, of course, dolphins can't walk on land. They don't have legs. What are you thinking, you crazy person who thinks they have legs in their pockets? Dolphins don't even have pockets, you know? And so, and I know this is a totally absurd thing, right? But I use that because when you think about it, when you go to the internet and you're looking for something, you type in exactly what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So if I go to the internet and type in, now I kind of want to do it. Do dolphins have legs, or do?
I'm so going to do it the second this is done.
I have a feeling there are two people watching right now, and I'm like, are they Googling this right now? Put in the comments.
Exactly.
But you know what? Like, you go in and you use your search words, right? Your keywords. And you are basically taking that and you're putting out a call to the internet saying, find these things. That's the same thing that happens with us energetically. So if you already are existing, everything in your body is vibrating, saying, you know, at the frequency of this is a hell yes or a hell no, right? What do you, when you call out for help, you're already reaching out to the people that you know are going to send back, are going to echo back what you're already putting out there.
That's why it's so important to learn your own soul wisdom language.
Yes. Yes.
So that you can hear it. So that, because you're going to have, or for me, and I think this, from what I hear, this is pretty common. You know, I have all the little voices, not literal voices, but the judges, the inner critic, the practical one that's like, don't spend the money or do the safe thing. And the other one, and the one that, you know, what will it look like? All that stuff is chatter. All that chatter is going on. But there is this, I always do this. People are going to experience their true higher self, or whatever you want to call it. The words get complicated, right? But
everyone has a different language, soul wisdom language. Everyone has different vocabulary that they use for it. That's okay.
Yeah. So wherever you feel it, that your higher self is, whether it's 5 minutes a year or 80% of the time, whoever that is, that's your true self. And it has its own language. Like,
it does. And it shows up differently in your body too, right? Like, you went to your heart, and I will say that there are times that I go to my heart, and just like you were talking about with, you know who to call, right? To give you the answer you want. I also know who to call in my body, right? Because there are different parts of your body that are, what's the word I want to use? It's like they govern different aspects of us, right? And just like planets govern a certain sign, or planets govern a certain house in astrology, it's like there's an energetic connection there. And so when I really want to tune into, if it's something about movement and whether there's a safety in it for me, I go to my gut. Right? Like, I could actually feel in my body when I did that. I closed my eyes and I actually pulled in my abs. Like, it's like I came inside of my solar plexus. That's where that lives for me. And so, like, everything in me physically kind of contracted into that space to let that part of me know, like, this is where I'm tuning in right now.
Yeah.
So, or sometimes it's my heart, and I'll put my hand on my heart, you know, and that is something that I kind of do automatically, but it's also, now I'm aware that that's why I do that. And so sometimes I can actually make things a little more efficient by just making that connection immediately.
I use that the way some people use Alexa.
Yes. So I love that. Oh my gosh.
So you brought up Google for an analogy, so I'm going to give you my Alexa analogy.
I love it.
I know this person that's always asking Alexa everything. I don't have Alexa, nothing against it. That's awesome. I love it. I love, you know, if it helps, that's great. I don't have it, but he's always using it. And I've never been around that very much. And it was funny to me. And she never got didn't work for me. She didn't understand me, and she would say weird things to me. I thought maybe she was jealous. It was very weird. And I know that's not true, but I didn't have a good relationship with Alexa. But the cool thing about that situation is that I started doing that with my body. So if I was going on a hike or exercising regularly and all that, some days you're just not, it's good to push yourself, but some days you need to rest. And so
Yeah.
if I was feeling tired, I actually would say, body, what do you need from me right now? And then
That's
I
so
would
good. And
actually
like, I'm like,
listen.
oh, yes, my
Yeah.
heart is happy hearing that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then if it's a feeling, if it's confusion, if you say like the safety thing, it's like, body, what do I need to know right now? What do you need to tell me? And I actually started doing that. And if you do something for a while, you kind of get in the habit, and it's been wonderful. But I have to tell you, some of the messages are pretty strong. So sometimes if I'm feeling like there's a situation I need to get out of, or I need to change, and I haven't done it because I'm too busy trying to figure it out in my brain, I've started the other day, or last month it happened. I started feeling like I was going to get the flu or something. And I didn't get sick, but I had the kind of achy, tired thing. And I was like, oh God, here we go. Darn it. My next week is going to suck and all this. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is my Alexa body thing that I've set up.
Yeah.
And so I made the decision I need to do. I followed up on it. I rested, and I didn't get sick at all. It's like I'm plugged in. Well, the language. I'm learning my body's language. And
Exactly.
it's pretty cool. And like what you did with your stomach and safety, everybody can do that. But we're so, most people are so like a head on a stick. We don't relate to our body and then the spiritual people, we're not even here. We're like floating up here. And that's wonderful. But you really need to make friends with your body, because it's, well, for many, many reasons. But one of them is that it has a lot of great information for you.
It does. I absolutely agree. And Elizabeth says intuitive embodiment. I love the
Beautiful.
words, the words for that.
Beautiful phrase.
It is so important, right? Because intuition, I think some people will ask me, where does intuition live? And I was like, well, I can tell you where my intuition lives, and I can tell you where my intuition lives at different times, because, we do have intuition. I would say that intuition lives in a combination of places in my body, but I also believe that that is different for each person, because you may be a person who leads with your heart, leads with your head, leads with your gut, there are, and if you know anything about the Enneagram, I don't know if that's something that you've studied at all, but, I'm a head center. I'm a 7. I identify as a 7. And so I'm a very head-centered person. And that is a place where I do live often. And even in my spiritual travels, a lot of times I do leave my body, but I don't always leave my head. And I don't, it's hard to explain, other than the fact that, like, I know I'm cognizant that I'm still present at some point in my body, but I can feel it more up here. But a lot of times, like, my whole body actually, it's not that it goes numb, it almost just disappears.
Yeah.
But I still have a sense of my head, right? But then there are other times when I do sound healing, for instance. If I go to like a gong wash or crystal bowl heal, like, especially ones that are very connected with the elements like that, I will go into a space where I feel my body. My body becomes very heavy and very connected with the ground, and not heavy in a scary way, but heavy like a weighted blanket, kind of like this comforting, weight that is there. But my mind travels somewhere else. And so it's one of the few times that I actually do feel disconnected from my head. Like, I will almost feel like I fall asleep, but I'll still have this memory of this very visual experience.
That shows that everybody has their own language. Their intuitive language is different. So that's why I guess it can get a little bit complicated, and why some people, it's like, it seems insurmountable if you're just not living in that reality at all. Because not only are you different than, but I mean, there's a lot of it's like dialects, there's a lot of similarities, but we've got dialects, and so we have our own region that we're living in here with our soul and our heart and our body, and then they all have different ways of speaking to us. But just like with language, once you learn a little bit, it gets easier because you start recognizing things. And so it seems like it's like if you're just in chaos all the time and you're like, like there's a storm living inside your head, and how are you supposed to make decisions or get wisdom or calm down? It's easy to tell people to meditate, and then they just sit there and go freak out and worry and stress out the whole time. And so, but once you get quiet and you just do it a little bit, you get a spark of it, which makes it way easier to get 2 sparks of it. And then it just picks up momentum, and then you start to learn your language.
But I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial in the spiritual world, which is that I don't believe that meditation is for everybody.
I don't either.
And I think that what you explained, that getting quiet, getting present with yourself, connecting with your soul wisdom is essential, but that everybody does it in their own way. Exactly. And, so for me, I see there are people in my life that I'm very close to, and I, for some time, just like in the same kind of ilk of wanting to jump out in the street and say, don't go that way, right? Because I can see that there's perhaps a struggle ahead, or perhaps, but also I feel that I need to drop in here that the future changes so quickly. So what you're tuning into in that moment is what is aligned at that particular moment, but it changes so very quickly because every single decision, every single interaction, it shifts it slightly. So, and especially now as we're moving through, to use a very kind of, more mystical term, like as we move, and I don't even know if mystical is the right word, but anyway, not everyone will understand this, but as we move towards the 5D out of the 3D, it's really even more so, it's happening even faster. And so at one point, I do believe that it was more aligned, more appropriate when someone had a psychic ability or an intuitive ability to say, this is what I see and here's what will happen, that stayed that way for a longer amount of time. And now I don't see it that way, which is why I think that it's very important that we learn how to understand this for ourselves, because we are the only one who is in the exact position to be able to see our own trajectory as we move forward and the way that comes in.
Yeah, no, that's a whole nother reason to find your own intuition instead of going outwards all the time for external validation and authority. And what you said about meditation is so important too. And it's part of that. People need to find their own way. And I have a really broad definition of meditation.
Me too. Yeah.
So to me, if you're creating art and you're in the zone, or you're hiking, I'll take out my earbuds and turn off the podcast for part of my walk. And that's part of my meditation for the day, because I'm hyper, and moving my body actually helps me to quiet my mind, and it helps inspirations to come through. And so, or gardening, spending time with animals. There's so many different, seated meditation is great for
sometimes
in some form that we get taught. We go to some class and are told, this is the way you have to sit. This is the way you have to close your eyes, or don't close your eyes. And that's the only way that works. And then people decide, they say, oh, I hate meditation. I can't get my mind. And it's like, that's there's not one way to do anything. And if somebody's telling you there's one way to meditate, then probably
then that's something to really consider, because I have a very strong meditation practice, as in that I have been meditating for years. I would say that I pretty regularly meditate. Do I do it every single day in the same format? No, I don't. Do I even do it every single day? Not really, but I do something every single day that gets me into that space.
Yep.
And that's what's really important. And, I went to a class in a specific kind of meditation because I wanted to learn about this form. And the teacher asked me, what does your meditation practice look like? And I said, it changes. And he kind of like went back, that totally threw him off. And he was like, well, that's not a meditation practice then, is it? And I was like, why is it not? And it's like, this
terrible.
Well, he kind of just was like, I don't know. And, the woman who spoke right before me was talking about how, she has this very dedicated practice where she sits every day for 2 hours, and she, has gone to these really beautiful, amazing places, and she wants to make that happen more consistently. And my thought on that was, that's wonderful. However, it's not always meant to be a joyous ride on a unicorn. Like, that isn't necessarily what meditation is. It's a lot of things, and it can be something different on every day, and it can bring you different gifts in different ways. Some of the most beautiful insights I've gotten from my meditation practice were that I could not get into that space, and it forced me to get into my body and think about what is going on in my body and why can I not go to that space?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just like in every other aspect of life, some people need more structure. Some people thrive without it. Some people are comforted. Some people feel claustrophobic with structure. And some people need to be moving all the time. Some people would rather be still. I mean, so I don't think there's any wrong way, but there's also no right way.
Yeah, exactly.
All the ways are right.
Yeah. So it's really just, tuning in, feeling what is, it is the practice itself, I think, that is really the most benefit is showing up. You just have to show up. There's no right way.
I like what you said about it being okay to show up differently at different times. It's almost like you just need to make an appointment to show up for yourself. And that can be in all different ways, and not to beat yourself up because you're not seated on your cushion, in lotus position, staring at something. And there's nothing wrong with all that. I love it.
No, there are benefits to that.
I totally do seated meditation. I love it. But really, some people say, oh, I can't do any of that. I have a friend who can't do the breathing counting because it freaks her out. She has an anxiety thing associated with it. So now she has a negative association with meditation. It's like that because somebody told her that's the way you meditate. They're being fundamentalist about it. And I don't like that fundamentalism in any way, even in meditation, which is beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is like really finding the thing that really is the rhythm for you, that works for you in the way that you need it in the moment when you need it. And just honoring that, and also honoring that in other people, knowing that somebody else's way of doing it is going to be different than yours. And it may have intersections where it aligns and it may not. And, that's their process. But when you can stay true to yours, and, I find that the more in tune I get with my own soul wisdom languages, the more I'm able to identify, and this is how I got to the place of where I am, of being a soul wisdom mentor and interpreter. And, I can identify when someone else is receiving or expressing in another way. And that doesn't mean that I need to necessarily tell them, like, you don't come to me for soul mentorship and I say, here's the report on you. You do this and you do it in this way, right? Because that's, pardon my language, but that's total bullshit, because I can see certain things, but I'm still seeing it through my lens. So I can help you understand. Here are some tools to help you understand. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's discover what ways this happens. I'll tell you some things I see. You tell me how that resonates for you.
Yeah. Right? No, it's beautiful.
So, well, we have breezed through our time here today. Oh, wow. I know it goes so quickly.
I have 10 more things I want to talk about. It's so fun to talk to you.
We will continue talking. I have no doubt about that. And we'll talk about that in a moment when we get off of the broadcast. But I do want to give you an opportunity. Let's tell people, I know you said you're doing one-on-one work, but you're going more into some group work. What are some ways people can work with you?
Yeah, thank you. So this is fun for me because I'm excited about a lot of it, because a lot of it's new. I have my normal website, julietcardinal.com, and everything's in there. One thing that's not there yet is a little checklist that I created to help people. It's called something like the Essential Empath Traits Checklist. Nice. And it's not as corny as it sounds. It's very helpful. I think a lot of people have really responded well. It's like, basically, are you an empath? And I don't want to get hung up on the terms. I'm kind of wanting to move into, like, I don't want to have to differentiate between HSPs, highly sensitive people, and that's just highly sensitive in general is what I'm talking about. It's not on my webpage yet. I want to put it up there where you can click on it, and then you have to give your email for me to email it to you in a PDF. And if anybody doesn't want to be subscribed or anything, just write to me directly, send me a message on Instagram or something, and I can just send it to you, and you don't have to go through the system. I don't like forcing people to subscribe, but
or they can also unsubscribe.
Yes, yes, you can totally unsubscribe. But it's really a great little checklist, and it is right now. It's at the top of my Instagram feed, and it's at Juliet Cardinal on my Instagram, and that's where I spend most of my public time, is on Instagram. And so, yeah, I would love to send that out to anybody. It's been really helpful to a lot of people, and it does have a lot of suggestions, like we talked about, alternatives to, meditation and alternatives to kind of get quiet and get to know yourself better and learn some of your own language. And then in the long run, I'm working on a course that's all about tuning into your intuition that will not be out for a while. But I do have a blog starting.
Nice.
Whenever the new moon is. I think it's early in October. And I'm going to send that out to my subscribers list
Beautiful.
And then it will be also posted on Instagram and stuff if people aren't into subscribing. And it's all going to be about surviving and thriving as a highly sensitive person. Very empowering, though, very much about accountability and learning about yourself and realizing how amazing you are.
Yay! It's so exciting. So we'll drop the links in. It'll be just a moment before I get them in there, but I'll drop them into both Facebook and YouTube. Make sure they're all in there. And this has just been a joy chatting with you today. I really do enjoy our conversations, and there will be more, I know. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're watching on, Facebook or YouTube, make sure to subscribe so you get the messages when we're going to go live again. And until next time, we will see you then. Bye.